Welcome this week to the Feel Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Crook, and today's ways to engage with our new episode, Doing Less Equals Living More, with Lynn Tackett, include continue to check in with your mind and body, especially during times of high pressure or stress. Remember, the physical cues of burnout will most likely show up first. But also be sure to pay attention to the emotional cues your body may be giving you. Write them down if that helps, or discuss it with someone close to you. Listen to what your body is telling you and take care of yourself in a way that you need most. We hope this gives you a guide in a really tangible way to engage with today's episode, Doing Less Equals Living More, with Lynn Tackett. Thanks so much for being with us.
Prioritizing self-care in your life and what that looks like for you. I'm sensing there was probably a journey in this, in your world and your busy life, and how you got to where you are today, deciding to shift and help other women as well. So talk to me about your journey with self-care.
Absolutely. So my journey is a little bit, I guess, probably just like some of your listeners, but in some ways maybe unique. Like I started actually in the world of holistic health, and I spent 12 years helping people take care of themselves. And then I shifted in 2008 and became a UX designer or a product designer into tech. So then I've spent the past 16 plus years in tech. And what I've discovered on that journey is that getting into corporate America, getting those crazy busy hours, showing up and trying to prove myself in a male-dominated field, and really trying to prove myself in general, took a huge toll on me. And I did have some self-care practices, but I wasn't prioritizing myself. And then you add into that, getting married, having babies, and it just became, I was putting everyone else first.
Yeah.
Which I know we celebrate and we encourage and we want everyone to be selfless. But in this situation, it was actually detrimental because I wasn't taking care of me. And I know this is so common. But yeah, I was putting the babies first, obviously. I was putting the husband first. I was putting the job first. I was taking care of everyone else at my job, doing all the things for all the people. And I didn't realize it at the time. And I have this concept where I call it like the 5 success traps, where these behaviors that lead us, that drive us to success, in my case, overachieving and people pleasing. And in other people's cases, sometimes it's perfectionism, it's being the helper. These personality traits, these behaviors, not necessarily personality because they can be shifted, but these behaviors that drive us to success when we're out of balance, when we're not taking care of our own self, when we're not filling our own cup, when we're not taking a pause to see what is it I actually want instead of just reacting to everyone else's demands and desires, can also drive us to burnout. And that is what I experienced. I ended up very sick, but no actual diagnosable sickness. In bed, could not get up, and I was terrified. I was very afraid because I had so much on the line. I didn't want to fail at my career. I didn't want to fail at being a mom. I didn't want to fail at my marriage, but I wasn't showing up for any of it. I was on my back of the bed, and it really was an eye-opening experience for me. And at that point, I guess at my lowest low, I made it my number one priority to fix this. Like heal burnout, turn it around, and make sure it never happens again. And on that journey, I did a lot. It took years, tons of research, tons of money, working with tons of doctors, acupuncturists, holistic healers, going to spas, doing all of the things. And on that journey, I discovered, I was just looking for, I just wanted enough energy to get through the day. That's what I was doing. That's all I wanted. But what I discovered was purpose and passion and a sense of joy and aliveness that I wasn't even expecting. Like I wasn't expecting it to be that good. I was just like, I just need to get through the day to survive my life.
Wow.
But it went beyond that. And so from there, I've made it my mission to help other women to prevent burnout, turn it around, and step into life with passion and purpose and joy and be present for your success.
Yeah, I love that. Wow. That is, unfortunately, so many of our journeys. Mine, I got there in a similar fashion. And the thing that's interesting is people-pleasing, perfectionist, codependent women make fabulous employees. I mean, until we are just done. And the problem in that is we delude ourselves to think we're filling our cup by serving everyone. We don't stop to serve ourselves. So then we've got nothing left to give. It's not authentic. And nobody's asking us how we are because they love how we're showing up for them. And it seems great and it's working for all those people. And the same with our kids, our partners, all of our parts of our lives. And this is a script. And that's why I started this podcast. I mean, you and I are doing this for a lot of the same reasons. I'm like, we've got to start talking about prioritizing our self-care and setting healthy boundaries and seeing the connection between our emotional, mental, physical health, because we are ending up sick with no diagnoses other than we are just exhausted, stressed, unprocessed emotions, unprocessed everything because we have stuffed it all to deal and help everybody else. And we're hitting these walls and we're burning out and it's not necessary. And there's a better way. And so I think for both you and I, what we're doing now is like, listen, do not get to where we got. We can do better than this. We have to do better than this. We are deserved to do better than this and help other women to do better than this, because that's how we change these narratives for women where we're showing up unapologetically. We're setting healthy boundaries and saying, no, I got to go fill my cup today. And when I come back with a full cup, I will be here 100%. And you trust me, it's going to be better for all of us if you understand that. But so I think it's that collective movement of us doing this so we can change these narratives. But we spoke to, I'm like, yep, relate to every single piece of that. And I want to change, I want us, collectively to change that narrative. So 5 to 10 years, we're like, oh, you got there, that's too bad. I was able to put these practices into place so I don't get there, just like flip flop it. So it's not the percentage of the women I'm talking to and you're talking to as well. Hopefully they just, eventually put us out of business. But I don't see that coming anytime soon. It's going to take time to change these narratives. But so I just wanted to say I just connected so much with what you say because I see it. And you and I are both seeing it time and time again in these scenarios. So in this process, what are things that you do now for yourself to prioritize your self-care?
Right. I think the most important thing, so what I found is recovering, ending burnout, preventing it from ever happening again requires both like an inner game and an outer game. And I think part of that inner game that we skim over, that we don't really get into, is stepping into authentic alignment with your values, with your purpose and your desire. And I see what happened to me and what happened to so many women that I talk to is that we are buried under so many obligations, expectations that we don't even know what we want anymore. So, maybe you're living up to what your mom thinks you ought to have done, or your dad, or your uncle, or your boss, or your boyfriend, or your ex, or whoever it is. We go through life, we're picking up all of this programming, right? And we want to make everybody happy, and we want to succeed. And, for a lot of us, making everybody happy and meeting all these expectations is equal to success.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is peel back those layers and, peeling the onion and get into our own souls and figure out, well, what is it that I actually want? I know when I burnt out, I was so tired from making everyone else happy. I no longer even knew what I wanted. What did I want to watch on Netflix? No idea. What was my favorite meal? Don't know. What kind of work excites me? What projects do I really want to pursue? Nothing came to mind.
Yeah.
And so that lack of ownership, because I had gotten so lost in being all the things for all of the people, plugging all of the holes and all the gaps at work, stretching myself so thin and getting all the positive feedback, right? So you're getting that dopamine because you're getting positive feedback. So you're like, I'm successful. I'm getting feedback that I'm successful, right?
Right.
Why up in the morning,
Yeah, exactly. Except for I can't move.
Exactly. And so once we find our values, what we actually want, that is, I think, the most important first step, or that secret key to unlocking our ability to say no. And you mentioned saying no earlier in having boundaries, because saying no can be very hard when you don't know what you're saying yes to. And by getting really firm about your yes, then you can say no with confidence, and you can say no in strategic ways that won't get you in trouble. Like it will move your cup forward, not backward. And it'll move your cup in a way that fills your cup.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know there's like tactics and there's things that you can do every day to take care of yourself, but I mean, those things, whatever they end up being for each person, vary, right? It's not one size.
That thing that hits for you. Yeah.
Yeah. But underneath that, you gotta know what you want in life. You have to know who you are, what you stand for, and what is important to you right now.
Yeah.
I think also we forget that we exist in like seasons of life. And what was important to us back when we began our career may not still be important to us in this season. So checking in on that purpose, checking in on our drive, and like, is this still relevant for me today?
Yeah.
Really critical piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. And listening to our bodies, and listening to our gut feelings, if you're feeling angsty, it's probably time to take a look at that values list and those things that you care about and those yeses. I think somebody, and I can't remember which guest, and I'm so sorry. I think it was either JJ DiGeronimo or Victoria Pelletier. One of them mentioned and that they have a list. I think it was JJ. I have a list of all of the things they're committed to. And then they take a look at that list to make sure every so often to make sure it aligns with their current values, but they started with just making a list of what am I saying yes to right now? Okay. That, nope. Those have to go. Those have to shift. What do I need to do next to get those shifted? And that can look like a lot of different things. It can be like, hey, can't do this anymore, but I suggest you talk to so-and-so. Or this is a no, not right now, but let's revisit this in 6 months or a year or 3 months or next week. I mean, it can be a lot of different things, but getting real with that. And another guest, Valerie Rivera, said, when you say yes, you're saying no to something else. So you got to make sure you're okay with that. What you're saying no to. And if you're not, then you need to reassess that yes. But we just are so conditioned that we got to say yes to everything that we don't even stop and consider. And I know I keep bringing up these guests, but we've had a lot of good insight on this because so many women walk this. My friend Deanne Wells said that before she says yes to anything, she gives herself 24 hours to sit with it, to think about it, to go home and consult her calendar, talk to her partner, look at what she's got at work with her kids before she comes back and says yes. She's like, that sounds like a great opportunity. Let me take a look at my calendar and what I've committed to, and let me think about that, and I'll get back to you in, a day or two. So you just taking that space to see, because every good thing is not for us. I say good in quotes. Just because it's good doesn't mean we have to say yes. So, but I think we get caught in that trap and we're afraid to say no. Like we're afraid of the ramifications of saying no, rather than like, wait a minute, I cannot do everything. And also, this goes nicely into confidently setting boundaries. When you decide, okay, I cannot say yes to everything, I've got to reassess this list. It may take those people a while to get used to it. You may have to set those boundaries in a couple of rounds with a few reminders because they're used to you showing up in a certain way. And so, but also, making those boundaries like I statements instead of you've got to quit giving me all this to do. Going in and saying, based on my schedule and I've reassessed, where I'm at and what I'm looking for and how I'm feeling, I need to do X. Can we talk about, can we help make some adjustments here? So talk to me, that's a lot for me, but talk to me about your journey in that boundaries piece when you started making those shifts and how you help other women do that as well.
Absolutely. So that's part of that. One of the pieces of that outer game is finding your voice and learning how to say yes and no in a way that people respect and that people follow through with. And so there's ways to say no without ever using the word no. When we go through this exercise, when we look at our life and we're assessing what belongs and what does not belong, there's ways to say no, right? So the first is to automate. Like, is this a repetitive task that I can somehow automate? Then go for it.
Yeah.
Can I delegate this? Can I empower someone else on my team, someone else in my household,
right,
to do this task? Because it does not require your unique skills, or it's not in alignment with the path that you're truly passionate about. And then there's outsourcing. Can you hire it out? There's so many ways to outsource, so many things. There's no reason for us to do it all.
Yeah.
And then minimizing. So, when you're looking at your calendar, does that meeting have to be an hour long? Can it be 20 minutes? Can it be an email? So trimming down unnecessary commitments and obligations and evaluate the necessity of it. Can it be shorter, more focused? How can we be more efficient?
Yeah.
And then just the last one is just straight up eliminating it, turning down unnecessary requests, meetings, and obligations. And there's ways to do that. There's ways to say no. You can say this or that. If you're in a negotiation with your boss about something, would you like this or that? Or would you like this first and then that?
Yes.
You can say, if they don't understand the cost of a thing, because oftentimes that happens, you'll be asked to do something. You're like, okay, that's going to pretty much eradicate everything else that we're working on. There's ways to say that, like, well, here's, explain to the person making the request, here's the cost of what you're asking for. Do you still want it? Do you still want it in the same time frame? Do you still want it with the same resources that we have today, or do we need to hire more people? So having those conversations about this or that, when, now or later, do you want it in spite of the cost that maybe was not discussed before? You can also strategically ignore requests. Careful with that one. But if there's something coming up and it's noise, and you've seen it before, and you're like, in about 45 minutes, maybe 2 days, no one's even going to remember this. It doesn't matter. It's not going to move the needle. It's not important. Let's let it sit there and cool off and see if it still matters later, and that way, everyone's not in a reactive state all the time. So there's ways to say no without ever saying no. And so those are skills. Those are outer game skills to learn. And there's scripts that you can practice. There's ways that you can do things that won't hurt your reputation, that won't hurt your performance, that won't hurt anyone's perception of you. It might shift the relationship a little, and it might feel a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. It's okay to be a little uncomfortable while you're getting used to other people getting used to you using your voice.
Yeah, using your voice, knowing it deserves to be heard. And I love what you said about, because I think so many times your boss doesn't understand what it is they're just like, they're full and busy too. So they're and so I've had that going back and saying, okay, I got this. We got to talk about it, because if I put X time here, then this gets moved. So what do we want to do first, or do we want to wait? And in my experience, I'm 54, been around the block a little bit. And in my experience, any reasonable person would be, oh yeah. And you reassess. I've never ran into a situation where it's like, well, you're just going to have to figure it out. And I'm not saying those aren't out there. You hear those stories, and they are out there. And then you got to reassess if that's a place you even want to be. Because if they're not going to honor that, your wellness, your time, then and I know that can be tricky. We got to pay the bills, and you can't just, always walk out of situations. But also just like that might be moving you to a track of like, I need to start considering different options for myself. If people are not going to respect your need to be well, I think that has to be part of it too. But yeah, I love the scripts you talk about, because there's a lot of different ways to say the same thing, and you can do it with this. And never even, so many times when you read, people don't even know that you've shifted necessarily to it. It doesn't feel like a no to them. It just feels like, oh, we're reassessing, we're renegotiating, we're looking at the whole thing. And also that part where we don't have to do everything. It is okay to ask your kids to make their lunch in the morning especially if they're 10 years old or older. Yeah, you got to make sure they just didn't put Skittles in there. I mean, but I mean, it's okay to ask a few things here and there. They can handle that, and that's just an example that I've used of like, okay, well, today, here's the stuff. That's where it is. On these days, you're going to have to make your own lunch, and simple things like that. Or, hey, honey, you got to take the garbage out on Tuesday mornings. I'm just not going to get to it. And believe me, I've had that. I'm using that situation. That's example I used with my husband. Believe me, after a couple Tuesday mornings, they remember to get the garbage out because it's overflowing. So little things like that where you have to take time and adjust. And then also, again, being patient. Sometimes it takes a few reminders, but also it will become very clear on who the people are in your life that actually care about your wellness and who don't. And it gives you a chance to reassess those relationships and places of being and where you're giving your time as well. And you're worth that. It's good to do that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, absolutely. And the seasons thing. Yeah. You got to check in with yourself every so often. We change. Our roles change. Our family dynamics change. Our locations change. So many things. So the thing that was good for you when you're 25 probably isn't still good for you at 30 or 35. So make sure or even sooner. So check in on those things and be mindful of that. And again, I go back to that. If you're feeling an angst, something needs to be looked at. Don't ignore that. Don't press that down. Taking care of our emotional health, mental health, physical health, you hit a wall. You could not get out of bed. And it was all due to you just absolutely gave and gave and gave until you had no more to give. So there is that connection. If we don't address processing, moving through, making space for ourselves, it's going to show up physically in our bodies. The listeners have heard me talk about before. I ended up in the ER 2 times in a 10-day period in the fall of 2019. Had every battery of tests over a 2-month period. There was nothing physically wrong with me other than unprocessed emotions and trauma, stored up stress. And I was in perimenopause, so that was just wreaking even more havoc. But it was all, once I got a handle on it, okay, wait a minute. My blood pressure is jacking whenever the anxiety rises up in me. So if I can manage, what do I need to do to manage that? So paying attention to those cues before you lay flat. What did you learn from that? Like, what do you know to watch for now? You talked about I'm never going to get back there again. I'm never going to get to burnout. What are some of those body cues you know to watch for? Like, I'm stepping on the line here. I need to reassess or pull back or check myself.
Right. Well, there's body cues and there's emotional cues.
Yeah.
And so I think the body cues are easier to notice, or at least feel like you have to do something about. Like, okay, my back is hurting, or I have fatigue. Okay, those are red flags. Let's look at what's going on in life. How can you take a rest day? How can, you schedule some time for you? What do you need to do to recover? How's your sleep? You go through the list. How can I refill the cup? So obviously I'm tired. What can I stop doing? The emotional cue that I think is so strong and such a big red flag. If you feel this way, it's time to stop and do an analysis and reach out and get some help. If you feel resentful.
Yeah.
So you are resenting your husband, if you are resenting your kids, if you are resenting your boss and your job because you just can't do it all, you can't do it all. You shouldn't do it all. You're going to stop doing it all one way or another. And ideally, you stop doing it all on your terms, not because you're in the ER or you're flat on your back in bed and you can't move.
Yeah.
So listen to that resentment. I think that one's the biggest emotional red flag for burnout is when you start feeling that resentment. And that's when you stop what you're doing, figure out what it is you really want, start letting other people help you.
Yes.
A lot of times people want to help. And you were mentioning this with your husband and at work. When you stop doing everything yourself, you let go of I'm Superwoman and that's why I'm valuable, which is a belief thing. It's an identity thing, right?
It is.
A lot of us learn to be Superwoman and that's why we think we're valuable.
Right.
And when you shift from being the Superwoman who can do it all herself to I'm a leader and I'm empowering my children and my coworkers and my spouse to step up and contribute to this vision of either a beautiful life at home or our product vision at work or whatever it is, you're shifting roles. And I think that that's why a lot of people don't do it.
Yeah.
A lot of women believe that they're superwoman. They believe that they have to do everything. They believe that they're worthy because they're busy.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that they can stop being busy. They can do way less, way less, and still be valuable and still be appreciated, both by your loved ones and by your company and your clients. And so shifting from the I'm superwoman, I do it all myself, to I'm a leader and I'm empowering the people around me and I'm investing in them, because it is an investment. Like, as you know, you have your kids start making themselves lunch, there's some training involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and same thing with coworkers, like sometimes you got to train people, you have to invest in them, but that investment's going to come back. And even if you're thinking, and I know you perfectionists out there because I get it, they're not going to do it as well.
Yes.
They're not going to do it as well as I can. I'm here to tell you, first of all, they can get there. Second of all, it may not matter, because perfectionism is not the goal. Getting it done is the goal. Perfectionist, being perfect at it, being the best at it, being as good as you or the exact same way that you do it is not necessarily the goal. Especially for things that you have done the analysis on, you've looked at, and you're like, these things on my plate are not moving me towards my highest purpose, towards my path. These are not what I'm passionate about. I should be delegating them.
Yeah.
Let it go. Let other people figure out how to do it the way they want to do it and celebrate it. It's not going to look the same way as when you did it. And that's okay.
Yeah. I love that example. I think that's something we as women struggle with so much, both at work and in anything we do. I mean, when we shifted some roles, our daughter was in between stints in grad school. So she was home with us for a while and she wanted to contribute and help out. She was well into her 20s. She'd been living on her own enough. She knew how to do things, but she did them differently than we did. And my husband and I had to release how she loaded the dishwasher. And we're both like, and he and I don't even like how each other loads the dishwasher, but we learned how to release. I'm like, it's getting done. It's fine. But then we had to learn how to release it with her, because both of us were like, it's getting done. Just look the other way. Just walk away. The dishes are clean. Everyone has something to eat on. No need to make that a thing. I mean, because there's no rule. I mean, everyone has their own idea of how to do these things. But I think that's a great, we do the same thing at work. It's like, if the calls get done, if the email gets out and no one's been offended and we're not using wrong, abusive, horrible language and everyone's informed, we're good. We're good. It's done. Yeah. So that control thing. But I want to, one of the things, and the reason I introduce guests by their character traits is because we have to learn as women to value ourselves as who we are. The minute we were born, we had value. We had value. And that value does not, as much as like our value as a human, does not ebb and flow by how much we do. We are not less or more valuable. Now, we might be valuable in a role differently, but as humans, as people, those roles are going to come and go and change over the years. And so if our value is attached to our performance within those, we're going to be in deep trouble when those things go away. And we're going to run into what you were talking about earlier, not knowing who we are, not knowing what we want, not being able to identify what we care about. And so getting really in touch with those character traits and who we are. What are those things that bring you joy? What are those activities that nourish you? And incorporating those into who we are as people. And that is, and finding our value through that. And then hopefully, if we're in alignment and those things that we identify ourselves by are in alignment with those things we're engaged with and giving our time to, then that angst, that resentment, that martyr complex is not going to be there. But that's not the script we're given, and so many of us have to get there the hard way because we go by the script we're given instead of sitting down and thinking about. And I'm finding, I've got 3 20-somethings. I'm finding that they are much better at this than the generations before them. And I think they've just watched us all hit a wall. I'm like, oh, there's a better way to do this than what is happening right now. All 3 of mine are much more concerned about their quality of life than the ladder that they're climbing within their workspace. They look first at the quality of life they are having. holistically. And they're all doing very well. But they've shifted the narrative. They're in alignment, they're content, and they're happy because they've made sure that those values and their why that they've asked about first are in alignment with what they're giving their time to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I think we're seeing a shift there, but yeah, it is not the script that we're given. And that's got to change too. And that starts when we're little, but in the narratives that we give and expectations we give to little girls, and to little boys, and how we got to shift those narratives. So, but yeah, so good. Thank you for sharing that. And I love when you said that resentment piece, like, yep, if you're starting to feel that resentment or that martyr complex, I used the word angst earlier, but angst is just another word for that resentment piece. Get with that. Don't let it become something more. So good. Right. So good. Thank you so much for that. Supporting ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. When did you shift from, whoa, I got to do this for myself, and oh, guess what? I've learned some things here, and it's time to share that with other women as well. Talk to me about that. How you
absolutely that. So as part of my journey, right, I'm trying to figure out, well, what do I care deeply about? What is my passion? And I'm very heavily drawn towards facilitating healing and supporting women specifically in stepping up and being their most empowered selves and accomplishing their vision in the world, because I think it'll really just elevate the entire world.
Yeah.
And so that stirs my heart. That stirs my passion. So, going onto that path, and then in addition to that, seeing how frightening and detrimental experiencing burnout was for myself, and knowing like my kids are on the line, my career's on the line, like there's all kinds of things going on here. I know how important it is to hopefully never get there.
Yeah.
But if you are there, to heal and to turn that around. And so, I've been going to all these conferences, being in all these work environments, talking to women of all levels, from straight out of college to executive leadership. And they're all sharing stories of experiencing a burnout, being in a burnout, struggling to show up. And I realized, I'm like, there's a need here, and it's a need that I can fill. And so that is really, I guess, the why is I wanted to help people with women specifically, to heal and to overcome and to step into their most powerful version of themselves. And I know when you're in the midst of burnout, you're like, I don't care about purpose or power or any of it. I just want to survive the day.
Yeah.
Start with that. We start there and then we go.
Right. Start with something that feels attainable and then go from there.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that. And I think, it's so, and I think you have multiple things to offer, because both, being in holistic medicine and then moving into tech, those are highly male dominated industries historically. I think holistic medicine probably a little less of it still. There's a lot going on there. So even learning how to navigate that as a woman too, is that something that you've incorporated into this as you help other women?
A bit, yes. Because I do realize that women are encountering, I don't want to say like everyone at all times, but most women are encountering slightly different experiences, right? Where we tend to be paid less. Unfair pay is one of those external contributing factors to burnout. We tend to be acknowledged less. Lack of appreciation and celebration is another external factor that can increase our likelihood of burnout. We are many of us are raised to be helpers. And so we're starting out with the idea that we're going to help everybody around us.
Yeah.
A lot of men don't get that memo, No,
you're right. That's a very good point.
It's different depending on your culture and your parents and everything else, but there is a slightly different programming that we experience as well. And so it results in a slightly different experience, which is why women burn out at a higher rate than men.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, those external factors working against us. And then we also have those internal factors, those beliefs, the programming working together against us. We're trying to be the nice girl. We're getting underpaid. We're, there's this collection of stuff going on that we need to acknowledge and navigate through, as you said. Heal it, overcome it, rewrite it, address it, and step into the light with our experience.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because I think that's a really good example of how you might step into the same role as your male counterpart, But because of that conditioning, you're approaching it in a very different way. And then I think what happens is you're approaching it in the way you're helping everybody do, and then you don't see your male counterpart doing that. So you get annoyed with that. They didn't get the same memo when they were 8 years old that we did. Right. And so I think that's a really good point to stop and consider too, is like, is this required of me? Or is this some narrative I was taught that I need to unpack and be like, whoa, wait a minute here. He's getting paid as much or more than me.
Yeah, he's getting more.
And usually more. Yes. And may not even as
doing this. But yeah, so we just need to look at the whole picture. Like, do you need to do everything that you're doing?
Right.
Do your job. Can you empower others more? Let go of more.
Yeah.
Just bringing it into the light, and so that resentment doesn't fester and create problems with your body and in your health.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Really good stuff there. You addressed this earlier. We completely lose sight of what our values are when we are just saying yes to everything all the time and living up to other people's whys and values. So talk to me about that light that went off in your head and the importance of continuing to set and come back to that values piece, that why piece in everything you do.
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely critical, because otherwise you're going to be reacting to other people's maps, like their North Star. You're going to be reacting to all of that, and everyone's got a different one. So you're going to be making someone happy, but not someone else. Mm-hmm. And then that's also, I think, where a lot of the mom guilt comes in, is when you feel pulled between you think you have to do certain things at home that maybe you do or maybe you don't.
Right.
And same thing at work. But here's the thing. You don't have to actually do it all. Figure out what's important to you. What are your values? Mm-hmm. How can you fulfill your values without doing it all yourself? Yeah. And there's a lot of creative, I call it like resourcing energy, where, we look at what we're doing every day and we see, well, is this filling my cup or is it depleting me? Is this filling my cup or is it depleting me? So even if you don't know what your purpose is or what your values are, you're just like, I'm so far from even thinking about that. You can look at your energy levels, and you can look at how you feel when you're doing an activity, when you're with a person, when you're in a place. Yeah. And if you feel like your soul is being sucked out of you, that's not for you. It's time to figure out how to get that off of your plate, whether it's delegation or minimizing or saying no or whatever it is, or maybe it's a longer term strategy because you're really enmeshed. Yeah. But, tuning into, you were saying like your gut feeling. Some people feel it in their gut. Some people feel it like as anxiety or like up here.
Yeah, I feel it in my chest.
Yeah, some people get it up here. Some people feel it in their true gut. Some people get headaches. So there are physical signs and symptoms if you are not in alignment with what matters to you, even if you don't know what it is yet.
Right. Yeah, something's not working.
Tune into what's making you miserable and take note, because that is a sign that what you're doing may not be in alignment with where you need to go. Yeah. It doesn't mean you have to go quit your job tomorrow. Please don't do that.
Right.
But take note and start looking at the bigger picture and then start making strategies to get away from the things that are sucking your soul out. And doing more of the things that fill your energy cup.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important. But, even if you're like, you talked about being enmeshed, where are those spots and areas you can fill your cup right now to minimize those effects and move through the things that are coming up with that until you can change your situation? It might be listening to your favorite music on the way to work. It might be listening to a favorite podcast. It might be getting home and saying, guys, I need 30 minutes to myself before we go into the evening routine. And so go outside, ride your bike, you get 30 minutes on video games, whatever it is. And I'm going to go do go for a walk, breathe, just sit in a quiet room and do nothing, whatever that thing is that you need. Find those spaces that you can find some relief as you're mindful of what's contributing to it too, I think is a big part of it. Like you don't have to just be like, I'm stuck here. I can't get out. There's nothing I can do.
There's always something.
Right.
Yes.
But I think we're so tired of like, I can't make another decision. Like, please don't, I know when I'm really strung up, my husband will be like, what should we have for dinner? I don't know. I can't make another decision. That's telling me that I pushed too far that day. Okay. What can so what can I do within that? Where can I find space with what's happening right now to make some room for things? But
That's a great example. Yeah.
Yes.
And
yes.
So true. Like there's one of my clients I was working with. She's like, I have no room. I have no room to budge. Like I have to do all of these things. Like she was really in the mindset that she just had to do everything that showed up on her calendar, whether she wanted to or not. I mean, we're going through all these things that she was resenting and feeling like she had to do. And she wasn't ready to let go of anything yet. So I'm like, well, what do you love to do? What fills your cup? And she likes to knit. She works from home. She loves to knit. I'm like, can you knit during a meeting? She's like, yes, I can. I'm like, why don't you knit during a meeting? Or in between meetings or before and after, like take what you love, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Incorporate it back into your life because you probably stopped doing it at some point out of guilt, whatever other reason.
Yeah.
And let it fill your cup. So it offsets that other thing that you feel stuck with.
Yeah.
And as your cup gets more and more full, an amazing thing will happen. Like as you start to feel better and as you get that cup more full, you will see opportunities that you didn't see before. They were always there.
Yeah.
Right? But you're so like enmeshed, right? You're so in it that you can't see the opportunities. When you start to take care of yourself and start to bring things in that fill your cup, you will start to see opportunities to alleviate that pain, to alleviate that discomfort. They will come. And so, and that's what happened for her. She, got her head up enough, got enough breath in her to look around and she saw opportunities to get some of the stuff off of her plate.
Yeah.
So
well, I think it just goes into that making space. We got to unload some of that weight to make space for new thoughts, new ideas, even that thing that's right in front of you for you to be able to see it. And you're not going to be able to see it until that happens. But yeah, taking where you are right now. And we ask this, you'll get this question at the end of the podcast, but something I use with women when they're like, I don't even know where to begin. I'm like, what are 5 activities that nourish you? What are 5 activities that nourish you? Are any of them being incorporated into your life right now? If the answer is no, where can we find some room for some of these? And just start there. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be this mind blowing, I got to do all of this today, this extrapolation. Right. It's like, okay, you can start putting a plan in place and start with this simple thing and you'll be stunned at the difference it makes when you make room for that one first simple thing. But thank you for that example. So good. And that goes nicely into living out of your own expectations versus others. You have to understand first what the values, boundaries, expectations are all entwined with each other and really flow into the self-care piece. They're all intermixed. You are going to say yes and no and give your time to the things that you value, the things that you care about. That's going to inform what your expectations are. That's going to inform where you're going to set those healthy boundaries. And so I think, people understanding that in order, but you got to communicate those expectations. Like if you've been living out of everybody else's and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, I've done a reassessment here. So talk to me about your expectations journey and how you were, as you came out of this, like, okay, I'm up out of bed. We got to do a shift here. I've looked at the values. I know where I got to set some boundaries. How am I going to communicate these expectations? Because people aren't just going to know. Like you have to, and also too, even I think sometimes women stepping back and like, wait a minute, this script I've been living by isn't my script. It's a script that I was told to live by. But within none of this, have I thought about my own expectations? So what do you tell women when they're in that space and even just what you learned in your own journey with this?
So you're stepping out of the trap, right? You've done the assessment. I know what's causing me pain. I have an idea of where I want to go, or maybe you have a really good idea. So what do you do next? The smallest next thing. So there's actually a couple different ways. Like what's the next smallest thing you can do that if you're taking baby steps, or what is the most impactful thing you can do? And so when I was going through this on my own, what I did was I looked at my calendar and I made a commitment that I would never allow myself to be double, triple, quadruple booked again. So I was just constantly stacked all over the place.
Yeah.
So I would just start saying, no, I have a conflict. Before I would just let it all sit on my calendar and I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to wing it,
Yeah. I'll figure it out.
We'll see who wants me the most today. But then I was in a very reactive, semi-panicked state all day.
Sure.
So I started just declining for legitimate reasons. I was already booked.
Sure.
And if there was a conversation, this or that I needed guidance on, I could elevate that. And then that gave my boss visibility into how much was on my plate because he had no idea because I wasn't telling him.
Right.
And so I started elevating these this or that's. Do you want me to focus on this week or that this week? But everybody's reaching out and having those conversations. And then I learned how to do capacity planning and said, some folks I was helping out and learning how to communicate. We have this much capacity.
Yeah.
Including me. We have this much capacity and the ask is for this much. What would you like to do? Would you like to bring someone on as a contractor or would you like to extend the deadline? And learning how to negotiate and have those conversations in a way that it wasn't about saying no.
Right.
It wasn't about rejecting the work or saying, I don't want to do my job. It was just like, how can we do this without me doing all-nighters and working on weekends?
Yeah.
I don't need to know that that's what I'm doing, but like, let's have a professional conversation about how to get this work done most effectively.
Yeah, most effectively and well, because when we're running at that speed, everything's getting done, but no one's getting the best of us.
No. And I can't be a top performer forever, go running like that. Neither can anyone else. So it's a very unreasonable expectation that I put on myself. And so it was just like, I just have these conversations and I was shocked at how easy it was. I was like, I could have done this 5 years ago. It would go so smoothly. Oh, and they promoted me because now I can manage.
Yes, because you said something earlier that's so important when you got to move into seeing yourself as a leader. And this goes for all of your spaces, not just your workspace, your home space. How are we going to get the most? Who are we going to empower here? Who's got that gift that, I can do it, but who has, who's getting denied opportunities because I'm trying to do everything? And I think that's too, and also realizing most of the time, if you're not communicating it, people have no idea. And their mind is blown when they figure out, oh my gosh, why have you been doing so much?
Why are you doing that? Yeah.
Right. I mean, so many times that's not the intent. And it, like I said, if it was the intent, then you need to look at a different environment because again, it's that you talked about so important earlier. If you're in rooms and spaces that are sucking the life out of you, why are you there? And do you need to be there? And are these relationships and people that those things need to be reassessed with? And there needs to be a different expectation, a different boundary. And how are you going to navigate that? Because life's too short to be spending your time in those spaces. And we deserve to evaluate and take a look at those things. But you use so many great examples here. Talk to me about accepting the layered aspects of ourselves, all those pieces. Like you all of a sudden you get to this point, you're like, oh my gosh, how did I allow myself to get here? And what I have learned to do is like, all right, I did the best I knew with what I had. Now I know better. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I can't change the past, but what I am going to do is learn from it and move forward from it. But we're not that easy on ourselves. I mean, it's been a journey. I still have to really watch my self-talk and I've really tried to shift whenever I feel judgmental, getting curious so I can shift out of judgment mode. But and it's becoming more automatic, but it's taken a few years to practice that. How do you work with the layers journey and the people that you're working with as well in terms of accepting those layers, understanding our value, releasing ourselves of this perfection model that is completely unrealistic and only has one road, and it's not a good one if you stay on it. So talk to me about your journey with that.
What I find is that there's often like these behaviors that drive us to burnout are often rooted in fear. And fear is a mindset. right? So it's a mindset that means we can change it. And so what I encourage people to do is, and what I had to do as well, is like, look at where that fear is coming from. Like, is it a fear of scarcity? Did you grow up in a household where you were under the poverty line and you were just afraid that there just wasn't enough? And you felt like you had to work extra to prove yourself and extra just to be worthy of the basics in life. Maybe it's a fear of setting boundaries. Maybe you were raised in a household with a very authoritarian parent and you were never allowed to say no.
Yeah.
Maybe it's fear of rejection, or in the case of the work world, job loss, because that is very real. I've seen thousands of people be laid off in one day.
Yeah.
It's a very real part of our world. And maybe it's that fear of not being worthy, that we have to be busy to prove our worth, that we have to be perfectionists to prove our worth. Maybe we're coming from a background where we were criticized heavily. And so identifying the fears that are driving the behavior and then rewriting those fears into an empowering belief and then practicing. Like you said, it takes practice. We've spent years practicing the mindset of fear. It will take time to practice the mindset of an empowering belief. So rewriting those fears into an empowering belief and then hanging on to that and reminding yourself every single day. And that's kind of where you can see really powerful shifts in behaviors when we get down to that belief and mindset level.
That's really good. I love that. And that reminder, I think fear plays more of a role than people realize. And it is at the root of so many things. And so peeling back keep asking why. Okay, I have this fear. Why? Okay, there's that. Why? And keep peeling and pulling back all those layers within that. But yeah, thank you for that. That's such a great example. And I think just also too, as you're making these changes, and they do, like we've said, they take time, your nervous system is used to you operating in a certain way. So it might react a little funny as you try to move into a new practice because your nervous system detects change as unsafe sometimes. And so don't be thrown by that. It's going to take you time to reset your nervous system's expectations and change into this practice. So trust the process too and stay with it when you know you're moving in a direction that you need to. I know that's been my experience. And my therapist actually said your nervous system is you're just moving in a direction they're not used to. And your nervous system is trained to respond to that. So that was kind of an eye-opener to me. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And also just the continual reminder of it took you 48 years to get to this point. It's not going to be, it's not going to take you 24 hours to be like, magic, we're all done. You got to stay with these things and again, trust that process, but know your value and that you're worth that. I mean, I think that's the big thing too, is just reminding yourself of that. Thanks so much for that. In summary, in Living Out Feel, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers, the name of our podcast, talk to me about the effect that has had on your relationship with yourself, as well as your relationship with other people.
Absolutely. So I think I'm much more intentional. I think I never really thought about having a relationship with myself before, right? I just existed. So I'm much more intentional about that. And I treat myself the way that I would like to be treated. I treat myself the way I want to treat others, with love and respect.
Yeah.
And that's critical. That's critical for being a loving and respectful person to other people. You have to start with yourself. And so part of that obviously is the self-care, is the creating margin in my calendar, is the making sure there's plenty of space in my life to do what I want to do, and honoring my own vision and desires.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think just much more intention with my relationship with myself. And as far as my relationship with others, so much better because I'm full. I'm not starting from a place of being empty. So I'm showing up with something to give, and I'm showing up with a vision of how I want this to turn out, as opposed to just being reactive and trying to please people, because people don't even know what they want. You can't make them happy. I mean, maybe you can, but keep in mind that they don't know what they want either. So
exactly. That's a good point. And a lot of them haven't done their own work. They're operating on this same model. So many of us are operating on that same model that we've been given. And I think you notice that once you start doing your own work, you're like, oh. But it also, I think, creates empathy of they just have not started doing their work yet. So yeah, really, really important. You're down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Absolutely. So I love to walk in the forest.
Okay.
As part of my recovering, whatever, rebuilding my life thing, I moved across the state so I could be in the forest because it was that important.
Wow.
So I love being in nature. That's really big. I love to read stupid fantasy novels. I'm not embarrassed. Okay, maybe a little bit. But when I need to turn the brain off, that's what I do.
Check out the Romantasy Girls podcast. One of our partners that has been a guest on here, and she helps me with stuff on the radio. She started that with her cousin, and it's a kick. They love it. I mean, I didn't even know a lot about that genre, so that's a side note, but check them out. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Pause on your brain is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
What else? So those are my two spas. I love to go to the spa and get massages. Wonderful. Any kind of physical movement. So that could be like 5 minutes on the Peloton to going for a really long hike.
Yeah.
Those are things that I really enjoy. And warm water. I love baths. I love jacuzzi. Just relaxing in that space.
Nice. So. Wonderful. All right. And 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh, confident, peaceful, and inspired.
I love that. Very good. Good. Oh, love that. That confidence piece is, and I think it comes from doing all those things you're doing. It's birthed out of. You feel better about yourself and your abilities to make good decisions for yourself when you start acting in a way that is prioritizing your care. Thank you so much for being with us today. Tell us real quick where your website is.
Absolutely. So you can find me at serenesuccess.net. So once again, serenesuccess.net. And then I have a gift for your listeners, and it's a cheat sheet on how to slash your hours without damaging your reputation or doing any harm to your career. And you can slash your hours by quite a bit if you follow all of the principles in there. So that's a really juicy one. And you can get that at serenesuccess.net/pod, P-O-D.
Okay.
Podcast.
Yes.
There you go.
All right. And that will all be on our website. Check that out. You want to get these resources, ladies. They're really going to be helpful to you. Hannah, thank you so much for your time today. I know it's precious. I appreciate you taking some time to spend with us. Field Podcast audience, take good care of yourselves. You are worth it. If you're feeling resentful, sit with that. Check that out and do the things you need to do in your life to make it serene success. I love that so much. All right, Hannah, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Such an honor and such a delightful conversation.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, everyone, and have a great week.